Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about spin direction, spin efficiency, and vertical break, and look at the behavior of a fastball, specifically a four-seam fastball, and how we can tie in some video with a Rapsodo and TrackMan for people that use that, but we use Rapsodo to kind of understand how we can better use our fastball in ways that maybe we wouldn't consider using before. And so the big idea here is, we hear a lot of advice with pitchers in terms of, keeping the fastball down and working down in the zone. And for many times that is good advice, but depending on the style of pitcher, that may not be the best advice in terms of how to use the fastball when it comes to working down in the zone, but also up in the zone. So off camera, we're going to look at a couple metrics that the Rapsodo is telling us about Blaze's fastball. And so we're just going to look here and get him into his delivery and go through his delivery here, and you can see the sticks, and you can see this fastball ends up, up and away to a righty, or up and in to a lefty, and it is in the low 80s here. Blaze is a junior in high school. So anyway, if we want to look at more specifically what we're talking about, we're going to get to release point and stop the video right here. And we want to look at the spin direction of the ball. Now, we're not perfectly behind, camera-wise, behind this release point, but I'm going to do my best to kind of draw the angle that we're looking at. And it's not quite that high on Rapsodo, so let me just undo that and there we go. So, this angle, what I'm trying to do is match the forearm. And if we would look at that angle on a clock, that would be about 1 o'clock. So if we're right over the top, we're going to be at midnight. And if we're pure sidearm, we're going to be at 3 o'clock. And so that, that 3/4 slot is 1:30. So low 3/4 would be 1:45.2. High 3/4, 1:15, and then right around 1 o'clock, we're kind of moving to that over the top slot and over the top spin direction, where the baseball is actually generating a lot of backspin. So if we look at some more advanced metrics here, spin rate is around 2,000 RPMs on this fastball. Although sometimes that spin rate is approaching 2,200, so some of them are a little bit higher. The vertical break average is 19.8, and so that's kind of approaching that 20, which is kind of that magic number when we look at, that high vertical break, and then what does that mean? So because Blaze is doing a couple things. One, he's over the top-ish, right? 1 o'clock isn't purely over the top, but he does have a lot of backspin with that 1 o'clock spin direction. His spin efficiency is very high. The average spin efficiency is 98.5%. So that means he is putting spin into the baseball that is contributing to the baseball's movement. So in this case, his fingers are behind the ball. He is not cutting it at all. If we would see a spin efficiency on a fastball, maybe in the 70 or 80s, we would look and see some cutting action. We don't see that at all, which is really good from this slot. And the vertical, and then the velocity is in the low 80 range. So anyway, when we look at a fastball thrown like this, with a high vertical break, the slightly above average spin rate, and the high spin efficiency, that ball is going to have some carry. So what's happening is the forces, the Magnus force is kind of pushing that ball up. And so what hitters would see would be a ball that looks like it's rising. It's not rising. In reality, it's just falling slower or falling less than what hitters would normally expect to see from a pitcher. So a pitcher that doesn't have that much vertical break, maybe their average is 16. That ball to a hitter looks pretty average in terms of as it's coming in. It doesn't have that kind of carry. It doesn't have really any sink, which we would, 11 or 12 inches of vertical break, we would say that ball has sink. So a ball that's approaching 20 inches of vertical break would have some carry. So balls thrown like that look like to have that rise effect. And so that effect combined with throwing a high fastball may be an effective use, in certain situations to get hitters to chase those high pitches and get that ball by them. So the baseball, the way it's being thrown, has some characteristics of being able to be thrown not just down in the zone, but up in the zone as well. And so, a big contributor to that too is velocity, right? So depending on the level that you're at, if you're throwing with above average velocity, then that's also going to aid in your ability to do that. Just get that ball up and get it by guys because it has that carry effect. So, so the same pitcher, throwing same characteristics, but maybe we're throwing 75. Well, that's not really going to have that same effect, where a hitter is going to be laid on that as much. And so, for a pitcher like that, we may encourage them to not work up in the zone as much just because they don't have the velocity to get it by hitters. So, so at this point for Blaze, like every mile an hour kind of aids in that in terms of being able to throw the ball up in the zone as well. So if we add to this, right, if we add and look at the whole arsenal, Blaze throws a curveball with a lot of front spin or top spin, and his curveball has a lot of depth, so a lot of downward action. So we could pair this fastball here with a curveball that kind of comes out at the same slot, but instead of riding up, it drops to the bottom of the zone. So we have that north-south action. So Blaze is doing a good job creating that north-south deception. And because he throws from over the top, he's less of an east-west guy, which that type of pitcher might throw a slider who throws a little bit from a lower spin direction, lower slot, creates a lower spin direction, and maybe we throw a circle change, two seam, and generate that arm side run, and then run that slider away from a right-handed hitter. So hopefully this provides some insight into pitch design and why we might say, hey, this is how you could use your fastball. But ultimately, we really know when we face hitters and get a catcher in there and let those guys give us additional feedback on how to best deploy our arsenal.